Call to order the Advisory Plan Commission for Monday, January 24th, 2022. First order of business is the approval of the minutes from our January 10th meeting.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Monica and second by Mr. King. All those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Second order, any special requests or continuances for this evening? All right, seeing none. Any old business? Any old business from the floor? Under new business, we have three items on the docket tonight. The first one is a primary plat. It is a public hearing. It'll be 15 minutes for the petitioner, 15 minutes for the remonstrators, 5-minute rebuttal. And I would ask Ms. Kuntz if she would give our responsibilities for plats, primary plats.
Certainly, as it is a primary plat, it is a ministerial act. So you look at the plat and determine whether or not it meets the requirements of the subdivisions division of the Unified Development Ordinance. If it does, you will approve it. If you think it does not, please specifically state which requirement it does not meet, so that then we can prepare those into a notice of determination to serve the applicant with.
Okay. Having said that, the petitioner will give their name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Greg Oko with Crossroad Engineers, office at 115 North 17th Avenue, Beach Grove, Indiana 46107. Are you sharing the screen? That's going on here. Perfect. Okay. I'm here this afternoon or this evening representing Emmanuel Church. With Emmanuel Church, I have Wes Harrison in the audience. He's one of the elders looking for approval of the primary plat of the replat of Block 2 at the Grove and Stones Crossing commercial subdivision.
Sorry, we need to swear you in. Is there anybody online that's in this petition, Mr. Harrison? Okay, please. Sorry.
That's all right. Just to briefly go through kind of the property background, the site is located at the southwest quadrant of the city in White River Township. It's near the northeast corner of State Road 135 and Stones Crossing Road. The yellow star there, kind of bottom left of your screen. Location-wise, more specifically, we're at the southeast corner of Grove Crossing Boulevard and Hart Grove Drive, which is situated within the Grove and Stones Crossing commercial subdivision. Just the parcel map, the tract is a 11.5 acre parcel, a single parcel, and it does include an existing detention pond, and that is within a platted easement as well. That easement is not being affected by this primary plat or replat. The zoning of the property, just for some background, we are zoned CN commercial medium. We have that to the north of us and to the west of us, currently undeveloped commercial, although to the north is under considerations right now for development. To the east, we have Topper Chase Apartments, zoned RMC, and then to the south is actually Emmanuel's Greenwood Campus, which is currently zoned RL. The original plat is a 4-block commercial subdivision that came through Johnson County back in 2007. As I indicated, Block 3 is currently under design, but our focus is the bottom right quadrant there of the plat, which is Block 2. Again, it's the 11.5 acre tract. You can see, if you look close enough, that existing drainage easement that is being retained, not disturbed. The proposed replat is going to be the creation of one lot in the southwest corner of the block, and then the retention of the remaining block 2. So the lot 1 will be 1.25 acres plus or minus, and then the remaining block 2 will be the remaining 10.27 acres. The commercial site plan for the future lot is coming in a subsequent to the creation of the lot. Just kind of going through baby steps. Want to make sure that we can create the lot okay. So we're here for the replat, the primary plat of the replat first. Just one point to bring up, why we're here for a replat of a lot, even though in your UDO in the section 1006-23 for major subdivision procedures, it does read that multifamily industrial commercial use, land zone for multifamily industrial or commercial use may initially be platted into blocks with the understanding that these blocks may eventually be re-subdivided into lots and recorded without completing a new primary plat. In our preliminary filing meeting and discussions with staff, because this came in through the county created the block, but the city identifies how many additional blocks can be platted into. So that step was not done through Johnson County. So that's why we're here replatting a block for you guys. So in conjunction with this replat, we're also identifying a maximum number of 6 lots total to be subdivided, replatted from block 2. So this replat is going to establish the primary plat approval for all subsequent replats of block number 2. Dale can correct me if I'm mistaken here, but the replatting of the remaining block 2 subsequent to this will be administrative only, and we won't have to come back to the planning commission. Again, Dale can confirm that. We had minor TAC comments. They've both been addressed, and I can answer any questions you may have, but I appreciate the primary platform.
Is there anybody to speak against this? All right, seeing none, close the public hearing. It's open for questions or comments. Go ahead.
So where would the other plats be on that block? Do you have any idea at this point?
Where the other lots may be?
Yeah.
I don't know, and that's the flexibility of a block, is that as users come and identify what land they need, the shape they need, you piece that out, and as long as it conforms to the development standards of the current zoning district, we can split up to 6 more lots. And that's, in CM, we can go, I think it's a half an acre, actually 20,000 square feet is the minimum lot size. So this could actually be parceled off quite a bit more. Full disclosure, the church's intention, I'm sorry, I failed to mention that the church recently acquired this from Franciscan. So the church owns it now. Their intention is to retain the remainder of it. But they wanted the flexibility of possibly 6 additional lots. That averages out to about 1.5 acre to 2 acre minimum lot size if they do full 6, which far exceeds the development standards.
Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, there's been a motion prepared.
Mr. President, regarding PC 2021-117, I move to approve the proposed primary plat submitted by Crossroad Engineers on behalf of Emmanuel Baptist Church, PC 2021-117, to replat Block A in the Grove at Stones Crossing Commercial Subdivision to create 1 lot and 1 block because it complies with subdivisions division of the Unified Development Ordinance, and to direct the president to sign in the commission's behalf the notice of determination and written findings regarding the approval of the primary plat as prepared by the planning director.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shaw and second by Monica. All those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 9-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. Second order of business is PC 2021-119, Denton Floyd annexation. This, again, this is a public hearing. There'll be 15 minutes for the petitioners, 15 for demonstrators, 5-minute rebuttal. Is there anybody online for this petition? Okay, anybody that's going to speak for or against this needs to stand and be sworn in at this time.
You swear to teach perjury, give true to the best of your knowledge.
State your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Jacob Dissing with Frost Brown Todd, 400 West Market Street, Louisville, Kentucky, on the council on behalf of the petitioner. I'll speak just initially as to the petition, and then I'll let my colleague Clayton here step to the mic as well, talk more specifically about the proposed project. So this proposed voluntary annexation, it encompasses 6 parcels, 2 of which are currently zoned, I believe, R3 under county zoning. The remaining 4 are zoned RR under county zoning, rural residential, I believe. The petitioner is petitioning to annex the property or have the property annexed voluntarily. It has consent of the landowners for the 6 parcels to do so for the construction of a multifamily housing complex on a parcel or on 2 parcels comprising approximately 20 acres in total. And on 2 separate parcels adjacent there too, I believe it's a little over 6 acres. They're proposing to build this living facility. This plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan of Greenwood, specifically sections 4 and 5 of the comprehensive plan. This area is identified as an area of interest. Moreover, pardon me, I believe it is section 4 of the comprehensive plan highlights the need for providing a mix of housing varying in type, size, location, and quality to meet the housing needs of the community. There's a stated goal in the comprehensive plan of squaring off the jurisdictional limits of the county. And here on this northeastern side, this would effectuate that goal. And what, as stated in the plan, the comprehensive plan of the city is already identified as an area of interest. The 1/8 contiguity is satisfied here with the proposed 6 parcels being annexed. So that satisfaction for that requirement has been met. And one thing I think that with this process, coming before the Plan Commission, I understand the desire to talk a lot about the design. But I think too, particularly with the any remonstrators we may have tonight, I think one thing I might add is that this is about the annexation first and foremost, and any plans would still be subject to the Plan Commission's future review and approval. So any site plans are not necessarily final plans, they're preliminary plans that are prepared in connection with this annexation application. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague Clayton, who will speak a little more about the actual specifics of the proposed project.
Good evening, Clayton Paxton, Floyd, 900 Spring Street, Jeffersonville, Indiana. Thank you for having us tonight. As Jake said, this is a annexation, and what we want to do is illustrate to everyone basically the concept of our overall aesthetics and what we have got proposed. And then when we do the actual submittal, then it'll be in detail. And if it's okay with you, I was going to walk up to the boards. So our first board here is basically how the development will be done. You have 20 acres, which is your multifamily, 17 buildings, clubhouse, pool, very nice layout. Beside it is the assisted living. And it will be 131 units, 3 stories. So that's the configuration that you have right here. Next is the typical layout for a 3-story building. It's conforms to your elements of what the exterior should be. It's all a no maintenance. You've got brick on the first floor, and the 2 upper floors are your cement floor. No vinyl siding whatsoever. Another view of it, again, it's the brick and the siding. This is just a different view. It's all the same color, as you can see right on here. It's a nice aesthetic. And then our final 2 is about the clubhouse. What we want to stress is the community aspect of this. This is a really nice clubhouse. Pardon the palm trees. They are not going to be put palm trees in. We do this development in other areas, and it works really well. And so we've got Jacksonville, we've got Nashville, and we know that Greenwood would also be well receptive with this. It's a 5,000 square foot clubhouse with a lot of amenities in it, and that's our final one. Our clubhouse here, as you can see, let me step over here. You got your clubhouse, resort style pool. You have a hammock spot. We have a cornhole. We have fire pits, exterior kitchens, and additional fire pits. These are elongated so that, again, it's a part of a community. We have brought out, which you can see, you've got cabanas in here. You have a waterfall for a pool. You've got other pergolas, putt-putt golf. So we really wanted to make it a part of a community. Again, as Jake said, this here tonight is just to give you a concept of what we're proposing there. And then when we have to do contract documents, then they will be submitted to the formal process. So, oh, and the final thing, we did get some comment back from one of the neighbors, and it was specifically for traffic, what was going to be done to County Line Road, and we will conduct a traffic study, and then that will be part of our overall design, whatever those comments come back as. So I wanted everybody to know that that will be part of it. Did anybody have any questions for me up here?
Well, is there any more to speak for this?
I would like to speak.
For or against?
It's a kind of a neutral at this point. I just have some questions in regard to the petitioner's last comment.
Okay, well, first of all, were you sworn in?
I stood.
Okay. Hold on just a second. If the petitioner should come, then I'll move to the demonstrator.
Absolutely, please do so.
Okay, go ahead. State your name and address for the record, please.
Robin Heldman, resident, 8824 Combs Road, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46237. I have been corresponding with the petitioner's representative, and I was the one that raised the question in regard to the concern for the increased traffic, especially at the intersection of Combs and County Line. They have been responsive in answering some of my questions, but my concern is adding that much traffic to an intersection that is only a 2-way stop currently, 1-way east, 1-way west on County Line, as well as 1-way north, 1-way south on Combs. There's already an extensive amount of accidents at that intersection. And with the proposed development of this apartment and assisted living, adding that to that intersection, as well as some other proposed construction of a convenience fuel station on the Marion County side, as well as housing on the southwest. I just am very apprehensive about that intersection being able to withstand that much traffic with being just a 2-way stop. So I'm curious if Greenwood, the city of Greenwood, has been corresponding with Marion County as to what could be proposed for safety and well-being of the residents that are currently there, as well as the proposed residents that may be coming in with these developments for that intersection.
Okay. Anything else?
I did want to ask if I did request what the cost of rent would be for this development, and they responded at a market rate. I was just curious if there was any communication as to what the proposed cost of rent for the assisted living as well as the apartments would be.
We'll address that.
Thank you.
Anybody else to speak against this? I can't see because the posters are in. There you go. Thank you.
Jeff Wiley, 1315 North Combs Road, Greenwood. This is going to be right behind my house. I've been there about 20 years. My big concerns, the first one is buffers. What kind of buffers are going to be between the houses on Combs and this subdivision or this development? Because I don't want these things just butted right up against my backyard. So that would be one of the big concerns. The traffic, which was already addressed, that was my second concern. They've already been doing work on this lot back there. They've already run into my yard, put big ruts in my yard. And they don't even have a zoning permit. So I'd like to know why they're already working on that back there. They haven't got permission to do so. And my other question is, it's subsidized housing? They're going to be subsidies? I'm sure you'll ask them that. And then apartments. We've already got apartments to the north of us with latitudes, and we've got the subsidized housing at the end of the road. So I'm not sure we need any more apartments. And then we've got 2 single-family units or subdivisions being built by Arbor right down the road from us. I don't know why they can't put more single-family. So those are my big concerns: is why more apartments when we've already got apartments to the north of us and to the south of us. Those are my big concerns with this, because it's going to bring down our property tax. I mean, there's no question about it, especially if they subsidize the rents on us.
Okay, sir.
Doug Reese, 1311 Combs Road. Hello, everybody. Tonight, correct me if I'm wrong, tonight is just for zoning, right? And then they would go through all the processes. Is that what that is? Or is this actually accepting everything that what they're proposing?
At this point, it's just an
So is
annexation.
this just for zoning?
Well, it's an annexation. That will-
Annexation.
Will
I'm sorry.
include the zoning classification, what the property will be zoned, and it is, the plan commission makes a recommendation, the common council will actually make the final decision.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
council, I mean, that's where we can talk about the intersection. Everybody here knows how bad that intersection is, so something have to be done with that. But that's expected, I'm sure. And then the only thing with me is I'm worried about the drainage. I don't understand. I haven't met with the head in that property just to the south. I don't know, probably 800 or 900 feet of it, and just want to make sure that I don't get any extra water and get flooded out from this, but I haven't seen, I didn't get my paperwork. I'm out of touch because I didn't get the paperwork. So, I'll get later. That's my concern. But I'm all for responsible growth. Thanks, guys.
Right, thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Ruth Myers. I'm not related to Mark Myers, although I am related to Mark Myers that farms this nice lady's land here. My husband and I, Tom, we live.
Address.
Yes, 6336 East County Line Road.
Thank you.
Myers family's lived there for over 100 years. We've lived there for 33. We've watched development. We used to be able to walk on our road. We watched it develop very quickly. We also are not opposed to development. However, we do want to be responsible. And I don't know if any of you have driven down County Line Road in the last year or two, you have to know what bad shape it's in. There are thousands of cars that drive down it every day. It is in such bad shape. There are accidents after accidents. There's an enormous amount of drainage problem along there that needs to be addressed. Robin spoke of, she's my neighbor, she spoke of Combs Road and County Line accidents every week, at least one accident there, some very bad. There's no brim on the road, so if cars get off the road, they get in a very deep ditch. It has resulted in some near fatalities, and I've made even a fatality or two over the last decade. So I think that the infrastructure really has to be addressed. Again, I'm not opposed to developing. I understand the need for housing. I understand the need for assisted living. I just want it to be done as responsibly as possible. And I think that Marion County and Greenwood, or Johnson County, have to talk about this and figure out a way to get County Line in better shape to deal with all this increased traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to say for the record, I passed out a letter that we received from Mark Myers, Jim, she referenced, not our mayor, Mark Myers, but the former Mark Myers. And I just wanted to make sure that it's in the record that that was distributed to you all.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else to speak against this? All right, we have 5 minutes rebuttal for the petitioner.
Clayton Pace, Floyd. First off, I'd like to address, we have not been working on the site. What that was is, it was pretty thick out there. So we had to come out with a bush hog and a piece of equipment in order to do a topo, topographic elevations on that. So we had to cut it so the survey crew could get out there. So it wasn't that we were going bypass anyone. So we had to have access. That's number one. Number two is the traffic study will be conducted. It will entail Combs Road and bike points. We will be working with Public Works, because that is Indianapolis County Line Road is usually, I think it's maintained by them. So we will be working with them to review our traffic study and see what recommendations they make. That'll be part of our plans. Buffer. We are required to have certain landscaping requirements out there. That'll be part of our design, and that will be coming through when we do our overall contract document for civils. They have to adhere to all your standards. Drainage, again, that also has to go through your different departments, has to be reviewed and engineered. We can't drain off into somebody else's property. That's not legal. So we know what we have to do. There's detention areas, you can see them on there, that will detain it until it's to a level that it drains off. So that's all part of the engineering that will be done. Again, this is for annexation and for the concept of what we're proposing. And then when that gets hopefully a favorable response, then we'll get into the actual engineering of it. But we have to adhere to all of the codes and regulations, and they're not asking for anything other than that. Was there any other comments?
Subsidized housing.
Oh, subsidized, correct. There is no.
Let me stop you before that. We do not make decisions on price points. I know one lady asked about rents and what that's going to be and whether it's going to be subsidized out. So you can volunteer that information if you like. You don't, you're not required to.
I appreciate you stating that. Welcome that. So it will be market rate. It will not be subsidized housing. First off, you can see how the quality of product we have, which is Class A, it would never last like that. So we have market rate. Now, we don't list market rate yet because we don't know what market rate will be at that time. It would be erroneous of me not to hold that back just because we don't know what it be. What happens if something happens like an epidemic? That we've all went through. And it just goes down. We don't know that. So what your rate may be today It may not be there in a year and a half, 2 years when we're finished with the project. It may not be there tomorrow. So anyway, it is market rate. We have a class A development and rents will be according.
Okay.
Do we have any other comments that I did not?
Not yet. We'll open it up for questions and comments. All right, 5-minute rebuttal for the remonstrators. Anybody to speak?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Robin Heldman, 8824 Combs Road. In my earlier correspondence with Clayton and Jared, I had, voiced my concerns about the intersection and the County Line Road being one way east and west and Combs being one way north and south. And I was told that that was not anything that was in the discussion and that County Line was the responsibility of Marion County. And now on one of the questions I asked in some email correspondence, they said preliminary review with planning and zoning did not require any improvements to County Line. And tonight they mentioned maybe conducting a traffic study. I'm just curious what changed their mind in regard to now planning a traffic study, and if this board could confirm that County Line is strictly Marion County's responsibility, or is this a joint collaboration that would be Greenwood and Johnson County and Marion County to make improvements to County Line and Combs, especially that intersection, and as well as my neighbor Ruth mentioned, just the strict condition of County Line right now. Thank you.
Anybody else to speak against this? Close the public hearing. Open it up to questions and comments. First, we'll say, correct me if I'm wrong, but the County Line Road is the sole responsibility of Indianapolis. What they can do is in meeting with the developer, I believe, can make recommendations on improvements. They have stated that they are going to do a traffic study. Can't answer to why they changed their mind if they did, but the improvements to those intersections and County Line is obviously Johnson County would be the south part of that, but as far as County Line itself, that's Indianapolis's responsibility. So with that, I'll open it up for questions or comments for the commission.
Hi, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And this is to Tisha as well. Sure.
I didn't know about
In the light of the fact that this gets a green light, everything, set, and I think, Sean, if you correct me if I'm wrong, once this is approved, there's a 60-day waiting period or not, or does it go, it's a procedural question, it goes right to the council for approval, to the normal readings, or?
Yes, this is a 100% landowner consent annexation.
Yes.
So it had its public hearing already. So it will have its first reading February 7th.
Okay.
And you cannot pass it earlier than 14 days after the first reading. So you'd have to wait at least 14 days and then there could be a second reading. And once it passes that second reading, then there was a publication giving notice that it has been adopted, and there's a 30-day period for someone to file an appeal, but the basis of the appeal can only be on the basis of contiguity. So after that 30 days then has run, it then can be filed and recorded with all the offices, and it would be effective.
Right, so I almost guess that about 60 days.
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends on, how long
Right,
it takes us
exactly.
to get it certified and sit down and file.
So that led me to this question then, like I say, if that all happens and, to get the green light on it, when would you break ground and what would be your build out time?
So we're anticipating an April approval process that it goes into, forgot the legal term for,
Technical review.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The public,
Your technical review, you get your site plan actually approved, your final site plan approved.
no one is annexation. The
Pardon?
The annexation is 100% and signed into record.
Yeah,
Is that what that is?
Yeah,
Okay,
so
we're
it would be April.
Okay, we're anticipating that being April, and then we would start 30 days after that. We're looking at a 2-year build out for multifamily. And then another 18 months, I think, we put on our petition for that, for the assisted living. Now, the multifamily will be built as one. In other words, there won't be phasing of it. There won't be 2 buildings built and then come back a year later and do the rest. It'll all be one. And then after the multifamily, then we'll start on the assisted living.
Great, I appreciate that. And then, so that gives you currently a lead time for this traffic study
Yes, sir.
and what the conclusion of that would be and how would that help with the traffic flow.
Yes, sir. And just to clarify that, I know I don't have to answer this, but with the input from the neighbor, specifically, I didn't know the other neighbors on there, but I know there was a concern, even when we were dealing with the annexation of the other 2 property owners, they also voiced about the traffic. So we went and made the decision. We know we have to do something. We want to be a good neighbor. We don't want to be an obstacle to that. So let's go ahead and do the traffic study, see what it comes up with, and make sure it's a good development for all of us.
The traffic study will be required as part of our plan review. And the plan review will take 45, 60 plus days, kind of depends, how many revisions are needed. But we'll look at the traffic, we'll look at the drainage, we'll look at all those things, but that'll follow the annexation.
That's just gonna be my question. It's the drainage would be included in that, as well as traffic study and landscaping
Yes.
and all of the things that people are concerned about.
And to answer the question about the buffer yard, there is a 20-foot buffer yard required on the side of that individual's home. And I can confirm that county line is Marion County's jurisdiction. Much like any project with our own county here, we will present the plans to them. We will adhere to anything Indianapolis needs to see as part of this development. But the requirements will largely fall in Indianapolis at that point.
Just one more question. So they will have to go to Marion County or Indianapolis to show what they're planning on, and it impacts County Line Road, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Just to say, we also serve notice of this hearing upon the city of Indianapolis government as well. And this year, so.
Got a question. I've got 67 acres here, approximately.
We have 20 acres and 6, so 26 acres.
So you said the apartments were going to be, I think you said around 20 acres.
20 acres,
So the rest of that is for the assisted living?
6 acres.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 acres for the assisted living.
Any other questions, comments?
To answer this question, I guess, and then the balance of the about 30 acres that helps us achieve continuity and yeah, so.
Any other questions? Comments? Seeing none, Susan, will you present the statutory criteria?
I will. In rendering a recommendation to the common council on this petition, please pay reasonable regard to the following. 1, the comprehensive plan. 2, the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district. 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. 4, the conservation of property values throughout Greenwood and responsible development and growth.
With that, I'll entertain a motion once we're prepared.
Mr. President, in regards to PC 2021-119, I move that the petition for annexation of approximately 67.2 acres generally located south of County Line Road, located both east and west of Combs Road, which is contiguous to the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, as set forth therein, receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and that the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented. We don't have any commitments, do we? So period.
There were several commitments tied to the staff report. to the RMC guideline, site design architectural.
You said,
Well, there was, how many conditions were there?
how many minutes?
There's two for the AG zoning. There's two.
No. The AC stuff. Recommendations.
Like 11.
Now, there's a difference between a commitment and a condition. So are you asking, are you recommending conditions
I'm
or
recommending, yes.
commitments? Okay. So is your motion then to approve with a favorable, to recommend a favorable recommendation subject to the commitments set forth in the staff report?
Yes.
Are you okay with that?
With the 11 commitments
Okay.
set forth in the statute.
We didn't talk about that. So, all right, so there's been a motion for a favorable recommendation with staff's commitments.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Shaw, second by Monica. For a favorable recommendation on PC 2021-119. All those in favor of that motion, signify by raising the right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 9-0. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Next item of business on the floor is PC 2021-120. 374 Emerson Rezone, City of Greenwood petitioner. It is a public hearing, and it'll be 15 minutes for the petitioner, 15 for demonstrator, 5-minute rebuttal for each. Is there anybody on Zoom that is going to be for or against this? All right, seeing none. Anybody that's going to speak for or against this in the chambers need to stand and be sworn in, please.
You swear to testify or perjury, testimony is true to the best of your knowledge.
Yes.
Okay.
So the petition before you is to rezone this property at 374 Emerson from industrial large to agricultural. This was previously proposed to be rezoned to RMC for a multifamily project. Following the failure of that rezone at council, our council took a resolution to direct staff to file for a rezone of this property from IL to AG. So staff has filed this petition on their behalf. The land is currently being used for agriculture, so the zoning would be in keeping with the current use of the property. This does not preclude the property from rezoning to another use in the future, but that would have to come before this board and before the council. But with that, that is the request that council did direct us to initiate this rezone, and it is in keeping with the current use of.
Okay, is that it?
That is it. Yes.
Okay.
I could expand on that. This was brought about because industrial large is next to a residential neighborhood, single family. It's duplexes, both residential, single family. Council desired to rezone this to agricultural as there was a conflict between the uses permitted in industrial and the single family next door. So that is part of the discussion that occurred during the rezone concerning the residential RMC petition. And council took that seriously and wanted to direct us to take a look.
Okay. Is there anybody else to speak for this petition? All right, there were several that spoke, or that
The
several,
gentleman who raised his
oh,
hand.
to speak for,
The rezoning,
to speak for this rezone.
yeah, to agricultural,
Yes.
yes.
And state your name and address for the record, please.
Tim Fox, 974 Methodville Drive.
Go ahead.
I would like to see the property rezoned to agriculture, which is what it has been. I've been there 21 years. My wife's been there 30 years. My neighbors, some of them have been there 40, 50 years. That's what the property has been. I think it's more appropriate for what it's being used for and as a buffer right now for what we have until we can see how Emerson continues to grow southward with all the other construction. To see how the traffic changes, and what other uses are being done as the construction moves toward our neighborhood. To give both you and us time to see how that's going to affect everyone in that neighborhood and in that area. That's all.
All right, thank you.
Linda Gibson, 201 Elm Street, Greenwood. I'm also a council person that represents District 1. And I believe it says volumes about the neighbors in this area when they were willing to risk staying with the industrial and to not be in favor of the apartments. I was asked to meet with one of the property owners of this property, and there is concern about the difference in the value of the property with it being agricultural. That my feeling is that changing the zoning that protects the existing residents there from something industrial coming in, and they would still have the opportunity that people such as John Taylor have had, that they can sell the property and it be upon approval of the zoning being changed. So they would still be able to get their value out of the property, but it's just a protection to the existing property owners there. I would hate to think that there's industrial large right next to me.
My name is Dwight Howard, and I live at 318 North Emerson Avenue, and I live right next door to 374. And that land has been agricultural for years, decades, and it would be a blessing if you would rezone it to agriculture. And I think the majority of my neighbors would bless that in favor. Thank you.
Anybody else to speak for? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the remonstrators.
Good evening. My name is Arthur Mandelbaum. My address is 64 Orange Street, Carmel, Indiana, 46032. I'm here on behalf of one of the property owners, Nancy Ramsey, who is recovering from surgery she had earlier today. She had intended to be here, but was unable to because of that. I just want to make a point of a couple of things. And I heard one of the people was for the rezoning state that the rezoning is in keeping with the use of the property as agriculture. If that were the case, then everybody who's a property owner here should rethink about why they would object their property was agricultural when it got changed to residential, which our clients, the owners of the property would be happy to have it as residential. Ms. Gibson made a comment that the property could be sold contingent on the changing of the zoning. Property is sold right now contingent on the changing of the zoning. And it does matter if it's changed to agricultural, because the borrowing ability of a developer is based on the value of that property. Agricultural property in this area is worth approximately $10,000 an acre. That means these 16 acres would be worth about $160,000. The sale of the property to the multifamily residential developer that we have now is $2.35 million. So that is going to substantially injure the owners of this property, who, by the way, are both widows, both working through estates to close the estates of the men that originally purchased this property together. And these nest eggs are very important to them. They've owned this property since 1986. It was industrial that whole time. They've never had any interest in developing this industrial in the last 15 or so years. There was once a petition made to approve a plan that would have sold it to an industrial developer that was denied. And since then, we've only ever had multifamily residential developers who've placed offers on the property, including in the last 6 to 8 months, there were 3 or 4 suitors, including the current one that is under contract contingent on the zoning approval for residential. So this is going to create a really substantial financial harm on 2 widows. You're going to hear from Mrs. Montgomery, who's here today. As I said, Ms. Ramsey would be here, but for the fact that she had surgery today. Thank you for your consideration.
Good evening, my name is Lee Money. I'm an attorney here in Greenwood, 310 West Main Street is my office. I represent one of the 2/3 landowners, Dolores Montgomery. It's a little hard to understand how reducing the zoning classification in a highly commercialized, highly developed area of Greenwood makes absolutely any sense whatsoever. This land has been farmed while it was being developed or marketed for development. The price of farmland is dramatically different, as Mr. Middlebaum alluded to. It makes no sense to take money away from the widows of the men who own this property, and that's exactly what you're doing if this is approved. It's beyond me why the city council thinks that's okay to reduce the zoning. Agricultural makes no sense whatsoever in and along Emerson Avenue. It didn't make any sense before it was developed. It clearly makes no sense now. Well, I can speculate on what the city council had in mind, with either being more control or anything else, but but it doesn't take into account the effect on the people who own the property. The property is owned by Dolores Montgomery and Nancy Ramsey. I always think that's what I'm saying. Nancy Ramsey. It's not owned by the city. It's owned by property owners. They own private property in Greenwood. What message does it send to developers like the Musing Group to say, wait a minute, you proposed something, we don't like what you proposed, so now we're going to take away all of your ability to market this for commercial or industrial or residential by diminishing the value of farmland. It's been farmed. I appreciate everybody wants a farm next to their house instead of another building, but that's just not a reality with regard to Emerson Avenue. And while it's nice to have attorneys and representatives up here listen to it, I think you need to hear from Dolores Montgomery, and the impact that will have on her. Dolores?
My name is Dolores Montgomery. I reside at 3111 Senior Road, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46239. I lived in Greenwood for a little over 40 years before I moved out east. I just wanted to say that when our husbands, Robert Montgomery and Dr. Summerall, purchased that property, it was light industrial. And that subdivision to the south was there. And so I don't understand why at that time they didn't object. You're talking about a considerable amount of money, and there's more than me involved. And it's actually my retirement. My husband was 97 when he passed away. And I don't have anybody to take care of me, and I may end up having to pay for somebody to take care of me. I don't have any children, and I just don't understand why, when I was a good citizen of Greenwood for 40 years, I helped develop the last part of Sila Vista, and that was a mess over there. And we worked, and now it looks decent and it's pretty. But I think the plans that the Musing Group has will bring in a clientele that will be a complement to Greenwood. And I don't see that it would be affecting the school so much because you don't have 3 and 4 bedroom apartments. And a lot of folks want to stay in Greenwood. They can't afford these big houses and cut the grass and all of that. And I think moving into a place like that, which is easy to get to the doctors and hospitals, would be a benefit to those people. So I just hope you'll take that in mind. But I don't think any of you would like for someone to have property that's worth $2 million and somebody just step in and say, hey, we're gonna just take that value away from me. I mean, it looks like you're doing eminent domain in reverse or something. We did eminent domain, and we did sell a little house on the property and the front when Emerson was widened, and we were told it needed to be widened for the development. So we just hope that you'll take all of this in mind and not take money out of our pockets. And I'm talking about Nancy Ramsey and myself. Thank you.
Good evening. Not very often you have the privilege of listening to 3 attorneys speak. I'm Tom Vanderlip here. I'm with Van Balen Law Firm. I represent Musing Management. You may recall that we came before you for a rezoning petition from industrial to residential multifamily. You voted in favor of that 6-3. Now, I want to say something. Our project is probably done because we had 3 city council members come to the BZA meeting and ask the BZA to vote against our project. And that's all well and fine. However, we don't want to see the property owners harmed, okay? This is the last project you have, that's a voluntary rezoning. And they want what? Apartment complex. And let me tell you how many easements for sanitary sewers and utilities they have to get to extend to their property because it's not widely available. The Denton Floyd Group out of Louisville is spending a ton of money. This is an involuntary rezoning, and it will harm these property owners. Mr. Mendenbaum informs you that the contract for $2.3 million plus. Okay, if we move forward with our project and we go to the appraiser and to the bank, they look at the zoning classification. And if it's zone agricultural, not industrial or commercial, it goes down to $10,000 per acre. We're not getting the financing. A 16-acre piece of property went from, just by what will be done in a short 2 weeks, from roughly $2.3 million to $160,000.
the idea of having the zoning code is to protect property owners from adverse consequences. They're not asking for their property to be rezoned, and rarely am I on the side of the demonstrator. It's only happened a handful of times. And it's not a coincidence that those other times have also been involuntary rezonings. Unfortunately, in Greenwood, not other jurisdictions. And I thought that we had gotten past that and that this wasn't going to happen. I hope that you'll recommend that the city council not rezone this to agricultural, because it does have very adverse consequences to two women who own this property. Thank you.
We have about 4 minutes left.
I'm waiting for you.
Be good.
My name is Curtis Shaw. My address is 3530 Hawthorne Drive West in Carmel, Indiana. I am a representative for one of the property, or for both of the property owners. And I am charged with marketing and selling this property. I come here before the council with anecdotal evidence of the value change that Attorney Middlebaum and Attorney Money has already alluded to, just so that you can see it is a significant change in valuation to go to agricultural land. Agricultural land, at best, is $15,000 to $20,000, but it rivals right on the number of 10,000, sometimes far below. Whereas commercial industrial land, I mean, we have this land marketed at $187,500 per acre for 16 acres. Let me share some of the data with you.
Well, she
can share.
Yeah, we-
Sure.
She was my teacher.
I can direct your attention to page 2 and 3, where you have a map. This gives you the coordinates on page 1, gives you the coordinates of the property. These are sold properties in the last 2 years here in Greenwood, as far as the land is concerned. You can see on pages 2 and 3, I have highlighted in yellow those properties that are agricultural versus those that are commercial and industrial. The agricultural land ranges from 1.8 thousand, so $1,800 per acre, to the high point of 30,000 an acre. And that is a rarity to see it at that number. Whereas on the industrial land, you have as high as 974,000 an acre, which is a little bit out of context, but on average, you're anywhere easily from 150 to 200,000 per acre. To the north of the property line, is the industrial storage facility. To the south, you have the residential development. To the east, you have a hospital. Nowhere around this property is agricultural fit. It needs to be multifamily, commercial, or remain industrial. Thank you.
All right, that's time's up for the demonstrators. There's a 5-minute rebuttal for the petitioners. Mr. Davis.
As we kind of stated in those opening comments, the land isn't changing. Other than, staying in line with what's happened there for decades. I'm not a subject matter expert when it comes to the agricultural versus industrial lending practices. So, have additional comments on that part. But that's not to say the land could not be rezoned at a future time.
Mr. Gibson.
I would just like to reiterate, I personally talked to John Taylor about the property that he has sold out there on the southeast section of the city. And he told me that his property was agricultural. He took, when there was someone interested in it, there was a contract that was drawn up. And that sale was contingent on them getting the zoning. Once they get the zoning, then they're getting the financing. So the financing isn't based on the agricultural, it's based on whatever that zoning is that it's changed to. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Oh.
I don't understand all the zoning laws and all the processes that are involved. But one thing I have learned over the years is when you do this process, things can be changed, and that's part of the process. And the value of something isn't what maybe the market says it is, it's what someone's willing to pay for it. I've seen over the years things that cars that come out that were 15,000, and because everybody wanted it, they were selling for 30,000. I have a friend who saw some farmland in Florida that was listed for 600,000 that he passed on, and somebody else bought it, and the next year sold for 6 million because Vermont Inn wanted it. So the value of something is based off what someone's willing to pay for it, regardless of what it's zoned at, as long as the zoning can be changed. And as we've seen this process today, agricultural fits. That's where it should be. That's probably where it was 100 years ago, and it was changed at some point for what it is today. So changing it to agricultural doesn't affect it being changed back to whatever it needs to be for the purchaser who wants to buy it and make the improvements and fit it in with what's happening in Greenwood and how the construction is coming to the north. And I'm not wanting to deny anybody their financial well-being, but I think changing it to agricultural better fits where it's been. And as stated, it can be changed back by a petitioner, again, who wants to purchase the property and come before you and get approval to change it back to something else.
Got about a minute left for petitioners. Mr. Howard?
Talking about value of the land, my father owned the 4 acres just north of 374 on the other side of the creek. Okay? And in 2005, those 4 acres, I prefer were stolen from my dad, was sold for $170,000. So just as a comparison. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, 5-minute call for the demonstrators.
Interesting message that Greenwood sends when it starts to lower commercial development land from industrial to agricultural. Had this proposal been industrial to commercial or industrial to multifamily, would have made perfect sense. What makes no sense is reducing it to agricultural. It's been farmed because there's been no other use approved for that land. But anyone sitting here that thinks that should be zoned agricultural, and somebody proposed that, you don't have smiles on, besides the city council, you don't have smiles on your faces as to why in the world would we think that that piece of property situated in the middle of development along Emerson Avenue should be reduced in value to agricultural. What the city council has in mind in doing that, only city council can speak to. But there's been no justification presented here today, tonight, in this hearing, or in evidence. And quite frankly, we ask that the appraisals or the information that
Curtis Shaw.
Curtis Shaw, again, last name, Curtis, I know, Shaw. Be submitted in the record, please, on our motion. Makes no sense to do this. It sends a terrible message to developers. If developers here who came before the BZA and before the city council with a proposal that would have generated $600,000 a year in new taxes for the city of Greenwood. And that was turned down despite the efforts, despite the representations made by the city. These developers don't come in here to this blind. They've been talking to the city since May. What can we do? All of the feedback was positive. All of the things they asked them to do, they did. All of the things that were suggested to them, they complied with. And it was still turned down. What message does that send? Not only are you turning down a multi-million-dollar project, a $60 million project for the city, but now you're not only that, but you're taking a regressive step of moving this back down to agriculture. It makes no sense. What the city council's motivation is, I don't know. Whether that's to gain some sort of ultimate control over this, maybe, but quite frankly, it's a taking. Quite frankly, it's a taking in reverse condemnation. It's a taking. I don't think the city of Greenwood wants to send a message to any future land investors or anybody else. Wait a minute, you're buying some industrial property that's more likely to be developed for multifamily residential or commercial. And what we're going to do if you try to buy that or try to develop it is we're going to reduce it to agriculture. What do you do to the value? What message do you send? I think it sends a terrible message. Not only does it do harm to the owners of this property, I think it does harm to the city of Greenwood. Thank you.
Well, we've got a couple minutes left. Anybody?
I don't want to take a lot of time. I just want to explain something to make sure, because one of the people here in favor of the petition mentioned it again. Once it's zoned agricultural, a bank will only loan a certain amount of money on that property value. And the ability to borrow money to build these developments is critical to developers. They don't come and write checks for $40 million to build these developments. They borrow money. That's how all these get done. And so if they can't borrow enough money to build the $40 million development, for example, that Musing was going to do here, then they don't do the deal. And our deal is in place. It's exactly what Ms. Gibson said. In place, contingent upon the zoning. This is exactly how this works. I've been practicing real estate law for 33 years, and I might add that I represent developers and big companies that develop property and get rezoning and stuff all over the state. And I've never seen anything like this in my life in 33 years of practice law. But I would just want to make sure that everybody understands that there is a financial problem with reducing it to agriculture. It does affect the development, the ability to borrow money to fund the development. Thank you.
My final comment, according to the staff report, this property's been zoned industrial for 50 years. Don't do this to these two ladies, please.
With that, I'm closing the public hearing. I guess my first question is it has been, even though it's been used as ag, it's been zoned commercial, or I'm sorry, industrial for at least 50 years. I guess my question to Mr. Davis would be, what are the uses of the industrial versus the uses of agriculture?
That would take quite a while to run through, but just gleaning a few, manufacturing, warehousing,
You're speaking to the industrial?
but you can do industrial, but not do agricultural. Storage locations, service, equipment repair. And that warehousing would also cover your distribution type facilities like you see on adjacent 65. And then some other assorted uses as I go through the table, funeral home, crematorium, automotive repair, heavy end, light, some vehicular sales. Very limited retail. No residential.
How about in the ag? What can be used in ag?
Animal cultivation, crops, grain elevators, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then most zones allow for congregation type uses like religious assembly or events or social club.
So, I mean, even in industrial, if there's a distribution center going in there, then there could be 50 trucks going in.
It's usually yes. You could probably fit a 150 or 200,000 square foot warehouse on that piece of ground.
Okay. Questions, comments? Sure, hold on. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I normally don't speak, but I feel because Mr. Money raised the issue that he sees this as a regulatory taking. He said this seems to be a taking of property. Legally, for it to be a regulatory taking, you would have to render this property with like no value at all because of the zone you placed upon it. And Mr. Davis has stated that there are uses that it could be put to. So in my opinion, I do not believe it is a regulatory taking, and statute allows the common council to initiate zoning changes by Indiana statute. So I just want to make sure that you're all clear and you understand that.
Okay. Mr. Walker, go ahead.
It's not necessarily regulatory taking, but it is a bit of a taking because the value of the property will change. And then it's a lot of work to get back to some other value that the city might see. So I don't understand why we would go from heavy industrial to residential. I think that makes more sense. I know that was the project they put forward a few weeks ago, months ago, whatever that was. So I can't see how we would go all the way to agriculture. I mean, I farm, and I can't imagine taking 4640 and a 21-foot field cultivator up that road to hit 16 acres. I don't know who does it, but hats off to them. There's no way I'd do that. How would you even rent that out? I mean, I wouldn't do it. I'd do it for $50 an acre if I don't die getting there or kill somebody doing it. So I don't really understand why wouldn't allow people just to keep it at an R3 type of zone so that they can maybe do something with it. Maybe the project they put forward isn't what you want from a city standpoint, but maybe another project is. All the other property in that area is commercial or developed residential. That's the only 16 acres, unless there's another couple hundred acres laying around somewhere where they're on Emerson, I didn't see. There's nothing else there.
On the other side of the airport is, I wish Ed was here to help me, I believe a Whitley farm. And that is a fairly large area that's zoned agricultural as well.
How large?
Go up there and measure it out.
I just wonder, you know, at what point would they want to offer that to somebody that has, you know, doctor's offices or St. Francis or somewhere like that to come in there to put some kind of services that the city would be able to participate with. I don't know, just kind of odd that we go back to agriculture there. I don't know. That's just my perspective.
I guess piggyback off that, do we know why the council went right to ag and not, okay, maybe the, you know, the, whatever we had before the multi-use, but why not, if the concerns the property, and I certainly have voiced my concerns about a huge project there, but do we know why the council went industrial to ag and not maybe even a more middle line, single use residential or RM, you know, kind of fit more where we're not getting a warehouse, but we're maybe aiming at a development that would fit.
Right, since no studies were done on any other types of uses like traffic study or a drainage study or anything of that nature, it's kind of hard to recommend a different category other than what it is currently being used as, because we know that works.
But if you, just a question on it, if you made it R3 or some kind of residential, wouldn't they have to come in front of this committee and the council again to get approval to do anything? Go to some residential in some fashion?
If the zoning is in place, then no, the project doesn't have to come to planning commission or council. They might come to us with a primary plat for the initial phase of the project, but as with the first item on the agenda, if they meet the development requirements, the board's fairly compelled to approve it by statute. So if the zoning was correctly in place, then no, the projects wouldn't necessarily get anything from any city board.
Other than primary plat.
Yeah.
So if you gave it favorable recommendation, then it just go.
Yeah, so if there were no waivers requested, the development criteria was met, then yes, they'd be before this board, but there would not be a mechanism to deny it.
Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Staff is in favor of this?
Yes.
Just a couple of comments. One is a little fuzzy in some sense because I know even when the project was presented, part of that because the land adjoins with an airport, there had to be a FFA rendering as to whether that's allowable or not. And at this point in time, we don't know what that would be. So for me, that makes it kind of fuzzy as far as how you render the decision in this case. Another thing that is, I think, something that to consider and whether we're able to do that or not is another question. But I know from the point of view that we're thinking that, you know, in this extreme, one from one to another, there's some common middle ground that we can get to. I mean, to keep this from being devalued. And I've heard the argument there. It makes sense in one sense, but is there something in between like commercial? Because you got commercial to the north, you got residential, of course, to the south. You got this, and maybe somebody can answer that and give a good argument for it. But again, I understand again the argument for agriculture to do that, you know, that still yet whoever wants to develop that, you know, it depends on, you know, developer and have a desire. Obviously, it's location. It's a location we're talking about here, location. But is there any common ground we can come to here besides going from one extreme to the other?
And I think you can certainly have that discussion, but in terms of your recommendation, it's kind of a yes, no. are you favorable on the petition that's in front of you or not? I mean, we can relay Mr. Bates, you sit on the council, so you can relay the comments as well as I, but we can certainly advise. But in terms of what's coming out of today, it's more of a favorable, unfavorable towards what we have. I don't know that we can necessarily recommend anything different than what's in front of us.
That's correct. At this point, we've been presented with a rezon. The A, by the city agreement.
So we can't make amendments like.
No, and so we have to.
It's a straight up or down.
Right, we have to rule up or down, and then if it's an unfavorable and that passes, then it's up to the city agreement to come back and make a different recommendation. So, and all we're doing is advising city council. We're not, approving it or disapproving. All we're doing is making a recommendation to the council.
And if I may add, is there outreach to the FFA for what was initially?
Yeah,
They have to.
FFA is
Yeah.
farmers.
They would have to get, that's part of
farmers.
their,
I would talk about farming, right?
that would be part of their approval process to get that.
Right.
To get that approved.
Their
from the FAA.
engineers took a preliminary look at, because there's a kind of elevation triangle of where these things can be. Their engineers took a preliminary look at that slope, and they got the buildings not right up to it, but within probably 20 or 30 feet of where that line would be. So by their own measurements, they were outside of that area, and that's the way it worked for any building adjacent to the airport. And then once they say, this developer, they say, we're comfortable with this plan, they'll go through the engineering, they'll spend that money, they'll submit that final plan to the FAA, and the FAA will essentially concur with the plan that's been prepared. That all would happen with that commercial site plan application, that would be kind of the last application along the road. That would be really where, the meat of their work is, after a developer would get all the zoning and everything in order. We have a development going in next to the airport that's exactly the process they had to follow. They had to get their zoning was in place, but they had to get their primary plat in order. Then they had to get all their easements in order, then they had to get their site plan in order. And part of that site plan was they got FAA approval. FAA approval is usually one of the last documents we receive because it's kind of a lengthy process. And to get that approval, they need the final engineered plans to review.
Any other questions, comments? All right, there's been a motion prepared. Oh, I'm sorry.
Let me remind you of the statute.
Yeah.
You are making a recommendation to the common council. Bear in mind, 1, the comprehensive plan, 2, the current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district, 3, the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted, 4, the conservation of property values throughout Greenwood and responsible and development and growth. Number 5.
Now, we'll take a motion to.
Mr. President, in regards to PC 2021-120, I move the petition for a zone map change to rezone approximately 16 acres of land located at 374 North Emerson Avenue within the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, from IL industrial large format zone use to AG agricultural district use as set forth therein. Receive a favorable recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood County Council, and the same be certified at Greenwood County Council in the form presented.
Motion, do I have a second? I'll second. So a motion by Mr. Shell and second by myself for a favorable recommendation to the city council. All those in favor of that motion signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Defeated 7-2. There was 3-3-6.
Mr. Bates was a yeah.
Yeah, he was a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see the
Bates.
6-3.
Myself.
That motion fails. Is there an alternative motion or an unfavorable recommendation or a no recommendation? That's an option.
Yeah. If I
You
may
should make
speak,
one.
there's I think a middle ground here. That would be commercial.
We don't have yet.
Well, we don't have that authority right now.
Okay,
Right.
so what are you?
So
You need to make a recommendation on the proposal to zone it agriculture. The motion to make it favorable has failed, so is there an alternate motion?
Mr. President, in regards to PC 2021-120, I move the petition for a zone map change to rezone approximately 16 acres of land located at 374 North Emerson Avenue within the city of Greenwood, Johnson County, Indiana, from IL Industrial Large Format Zone use to AG Agricultural District use as set forth therein. Received no recommendation from this commission to the Greenwood Common Council, and the same be certified to the Greenwood Common Council in the form presented.
Second.
by Mr. Shell and second by Mr. King. I remind you that a yes vote is no recommendation and we're a no vote. So if you vote yes, you're voting for a no recommendation. That in doing that, you're sending no recommendation to the city council. Just so that's clear. Okay, all those in favor of no recommendation signify by raising your right hand. All those opposed, same sign. Recommendation carries 5-4. So there will be a no recommendation to the city council.
Every ball.
Any new business on the floor?
It's a punt.
Order.
It's a punt.
Any new business on the floor? Seeing none, any announcements?
We do have business, so we will have our next meeting.
Okay.
Valentine's
We
Day.
We have one announcement.
This is actually my last planning commission meeting.
Okay.
Accepted a different position. My last day with the city is a meeting just before the first February meeting, actually.
Friday before.
Wednesday.
Well, sorry to see you go.
Not going tomorrow. Down to the county highway.
He will be severely missed by
Where you going?
CDS.
I'll be a highway engineer for the county.
Oh, really?
Good for you.
Congratulations.
Good for him, bad for the city.
Well, yeah. Mr. Chairman, I've been weird.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes, sir.
Well, yeah. Surprised to get
I'm sorry, I'm trying to have a laugh. No, no second. John.
Did you guys? Did your papers?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Ron, I'm with you.
Come up with something that's.
Single.
No.